When it comes to crowd control or CC, there are many different types that can affect a character. Some can stun a player, impairing their movement or making them unable to move altogether. There are also knockups or knockbacks that can physically move a player and make them an easy target. And it's also very common for games that have abilities to eventually come around to the idea of a character that can turn off abilities. Whether you're playing a MOBA, a tactical shooter, or something in between, video game developers always seem to come around to this idea. League of Legends had silencing, Overwatch had hacking with Sombra, and in Valorant we have suppression. This is KO in a nutshell. KO was the 4th initiator released into Valorant, and he comes equipped with everything you could want in an agent. I'm talking flashes, a molly, and as mentioned before, a brand new mechanic called suppression that prevents enemies from using any abilities. At first, KO sounds like he'd be overpowered, but as the results show, he isn't. He's kind of just mediocre and has proven time and time again, not excelling at any one skill is a surefire way to become irrelevant. I wish I could say this Robocop was better because I really do like his design, but honestly if he was super strong, I feel as though it probably wouldn't be healthy for the game. Being able to stop your enemies from doing anything is the quickest way to kill your franchise. And disabling players' abilities sounds cool on paper, but really all it does is dumb down the game to a level that I don't think anyone would enjoy playing. KO's signature ability is 0 point and he gets 1 charge for free, and after being used it goes on a 40-second cooldown. With this ability, KO throws a knife that detonates after about a second or two, and any enemies in the area are suppressed, and it also reveals which enemies you suppressed. The knife can be shot and destroyed, but honestly, unless you don't know what you're doing, this should never happen. The effect goes through walls, so you can always use it on the other side of one, pretty much making it so there's no counterplay. The knife will also cancel certain abilities and ultimates, and by that I mean like 3 in the whole game, including Sky's dog, Sova's drone, his ult, Raze's ult, and that's pretty much it. You can also turn off Sentinel's util and Jett's knives, but they get them back when the effect ends, so I wouldn't really call it canceling. I definitely think this is a reason why KO doesn't feel so strong. He's so specific in who he actually counters that it's no wonder he isn't that relevant in the meta. Imagine if I told you there was an agent with the strongest utility in the game, but they could only affect 1.5 agents in the game, and you could only play them while using your mouse and keyboard with your feet. Suddenly you wouldn't be as excited, except for some of you who would be a little too excited. Calm down there, buddy. And another thing with KO's knife is that it sounds cool on paper. Turn off enemy util and make them useless. Unfortunately, unlike the other CC in the game, this doesn't actively make winning a gunfight easier. If your aim is bad, your aim is bad. And if you turn off enemy util, your aim will probably still be bad. Not to mention, in lower elos, players often don't even use their util anyways, so the knife does little more than adding a distracting visual effect on the enemy's screen. So a lot of the time, this ability alone will not help you in one-on-one situations. But where it shines is when you're either pushing with your whole team or when you're trying to stop an enemy push. Since turning off their util at a critical moment could force an enemy team to push without smokes up and no flashes, or be forced to wait out the duration of the disabling effect. And if you turn off a lonely sentinel who gets stuck on site, that player's game turns into a survival horror for 8 seconds. KO's second ability is his flash drive binded to Q by default. This is his flash. It costs 250 credits per charge, and KO can hold up to 2 per round. KO's flash is as basic as it gets. It's effectively just a CSGO flashbang, and he can throw it by either pressing left click or right click. The left click will throw the flash a far distance and has a longer windup time, and the right click is a close lob with a much shorter windup time. And although it gets a lot of value in that game, it just isn't as good in Valorant. There are other flashes that are just way better in the game, like Sky's, Breach's, and even Yoru's. And the option to left click doesn't really give it much of a benefit over Phoenix's flash because you'll probably never use it, since throwing the flash with the left click takes way too long to detonate, making it the easiest flash to dodge in the game. KO threw that flash 9 minutes ago and it's only now detonating. If you get fully blinded by this thing, not only do you deserve to die, but you should also lose 10 railroads on the spot for it. So 99% of the time, you're just gonna right click lob and peek off it, so that option might as well not even be there. And even when you do right click, your crosshair placement for the flash is probably gonna be so messed up that you'll probably whiff all the follow-up shots anyways and just embarrass yourself. But lucky for me, my crosshair placement's always bad, so that doesn't really affect me. Or unlucky for me, I guess. KO's final ability is his Fragment, bind it to C by default. This is KO's Molly. It costs 200 credits per charge and he can hold 1 charge per round. It pulses 4 times, and with each pulse it does damage to any players within its radius, dealing more damage the closer a player is to the middle. KO's Molly is a Molly. It looks like a Molly, acts like a Molly, and even smells like a Molly. It doesn't do anything special besides the damage it deals. But at least the damage is good enough to stop enemies from defusing half the spike, so you can use it for post plants. Not much else to say about this one. KO's ult is Null Command and costs 7 ultimate points to use. This ult overloads KO with polarized Radiantite energy that pulses from his body. Each pulse will suppress enemies for 4 seconds if they get hit by it. Also, if KO gets killed while he's in his ult, he gets downed instead and has 850 health and can be revived by his teammates. Oh, and he gets combat stim too. Yeah, honestly, this ult feels like it was made by a child who couldn't figure out what powers to give his superhero, so he just decided to give him all of them. It's almost like they wanted this ult to be a replacement for Phoenix's with the ability to res him, but they also wanted to incorporate suppression in it somehow to better fit his character. And then after realizing that it was a little too weak, they decided to buff him just a little bit by giving him an extra 15% fire rate. There are a couple of things that get me about this ultimate. For starters, I guess keeping KO on the ground doing nothing for 10 seconds was too strong, so they decided to make him killable, but gave him an absurd amount of HP so that no one in their right mind would spend the time to finish him off. Except in solo queue, where players are so greedy that when they see a downed KO, they all rush to try to kill him as fast as possible in an effort to steal the kill from the player that did all the work. Also, because they needed to make sure that players knew whether they were in range of his ult so that they could play around it, they made the pulses of the ult visible. This came with the unfortunate downside that players can always know where KO is while he's ulting. But Riot can't make the pulses invisible or it would be too overpowered, being able to turn off util without you knowing if you're in range or not. This ult is an absolute mess, and just thinking about it gives me a headache. KO's a pretty decent agent. His kit has a little bit of everything from flashes, suppression, info gathering, and even a molly. Some parts of his kit do feel a little all over the place, but with enough practice you can make good use out of him. And although he's playable, I do think he needs some sort of a buff if he ever wants to see any meta relevance. But if you do see him on the enemy team, make sure you play off site or else you'll risk getting KO'd. Hey everyone, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, I'd really appreciate if you left a like. Also, if you have any suggestions for agents you want to see me talk about in this series, please leave a comment letting me know. If you're interested, consider checking me out on stream at twitch.tv/JitterzVal. I stream every Saturday from 2 to 6 p.m. EST. Also, follow me on Twitter if you'd like. I post updates on there pretty often. And if you want to join my Discord community, there will also be a link in the description for that as well. And finally, don't forget to subscribe for more Valorant related content.